And my first impression of Fuller Seminary is the 1970s, believe it or not, as a consumer of the leadership that was developed at Fuller Seminary. Some of the leaders, some of my youth pastors at Fuller attended Fuller, and they actually invited me and snuck me in a couple of classes in the late 70s, early 80s. And as the Lord called me into ministry, I chose Fuller. And I chose Fuller primarily because I could ride my bike here. No. But really, it was an issue that I was appreciative of their leadership, their biblical acumen, and their character. And that's one of the reasons why I chose Fuller. And then I actually attended as a student from 1988 to 1994 on an MDiv track. About halfway through it, God called me as the director of AACF, Asian American Christian Fellowship. So I stepped out of school for several years and didn't finish my degree until 2002. Basically, I was after an M anything at that point, and they were able to allow me to go back to school, and I got an MA in Intercultural Studies, which was providential in my studies and my passion in mission. I currently serve as a national director of the EPIC Movement, which is Campus Crusade's Asian American ministry. And to understand Campus Crusade, yes, it is pretty white. Matter of fact, if you look at the statistics on how you want to look at it, if you looked at it of 27,000 workers worldwide, only 100 are Asian American. Now, there are Asians in Asia, but only 100 people that we know serve in the Campus Crusade organization. So you kind of understand what I'm up against. And it's been a great, great time of having the ear of the leadership of Campus Crusade and understanding the scope that they want to reach in terms of the Asian Americans in the United States. I've experienced Fuller in many different ways, pen and paper, PC, and then now PDAs. So it's kind of a fun little transition of technology. During the time, I've seen tremendous demographic shifts in the Asian American community. In the 70s and 80s, it's pretty much Japanese and Chinese here. That was it. And then we see an influx in the 80s and 90s. We see the Koreans, a few Southeast Asians, a rise in Filipinos. But now, what's the next generation of Asian Americans? And I'm amiss to see that there aren't very many Southeast Asians here. My brother Ken and a couple other folks. But the Cambodians, the Hmong, the Thai, the Mian, the Indonesian, the South Asians, where are they in this dialogue? And you know what, Asian American folks, my brethren here, if we're not looking out for them as Asian Americans, if we're not responsible, if I could say, for our brethren, who will be? And can you imagine our churches, what they would look like if somebody mentored us 20, 30 years ago in this process of seminary education and growth? If we are not the advocates for minority Asian groups, nobody will be. So I stand as a bridge person between actually 30 years of Asian American history. It's kind of weird. I say maybe just Ben, mid-40s. I say mid, I'm not late 40s, Ben. Where's Ben? With the initial rush of Asian American students in the 90s, 70s, and 80s, they pastored me and they mentored me. Now, as a minister, as a seminary student in the mid-80s and 90s, kind of that mid thing, and now I am actually the mentor of several students that are at Fuller or at other seminaries around the country. So it's been an interesting part of being a mentee and a mentor to the products of seminary and Fuller. Now, all who have been through Fuller, and I'm talking to a lot of students here, because I know a lot of us are not from Fuller, but the students, I've been challenged academically. My eyesight is ruined with thousands of pages read, fingers cramped with a million keystrokes, and my mind has been hopefully extended and challenged and expanded with engaging academicians. I've been enriched socially by meeting current and upcoming world leaders from across the globe. That's been a fascinating time at Fuller. And I've also been understanding how to balance life with academics and theological reflections at the Crown City Brewery, if you know where that is in Pasadena. That's a Fuller thing. Sorry, I know most of us, we don't know where that is. Okay, but all of us, we're stretched in our faith and, our pocketbooks, but it's been a good experience to be at Fuller. But one thing has lacked at my education here, and I think we kind of understand what this is. Seeing the vast wave of Asian American students from the 70s till now, Fuller has really never grasped effectively how to empower or legitimize the Asian American community. I do give credit to Fuller because they've tried. Stanley Noah in the mid-1980s taught a class on Asian American ministries and was a pioneer, well, the first class ever to talk about Asian American ministries in the 1980s. In the early 1990s, Dr. Ken Fong and Dr. Hertig did a class in Asian American ministries as well, packed, wall-to-wall students. Fuller Seminary has partners with Logo Seminary. It's hired a few Asian American professors, but they taught in specialties that were either too specific or too general to really reach the Asian American scope. Fuller Seminary has had a very influential staff and administrators who has served in the provost's office, academic advising, admissions, the Fuller Foundation, psychological services, just to name a few. But we have never had a full-time faculty that was able to address the complex issues and growing issues of the Asian American community. Every few years, there are ad hoc gatherings of Asian American students that cast vision of what could be, but they are merely students kind of just preaching to the choir. It's never really gone outside of that room. The gatherings are great for students, but they are in a way useless until a champion is there at the institution to carry it to the next level. I even met with a potential master's candidate a few months ago who did not walk to receive their diploma in silent, maybe vocal protest of not having an Asian American Studies program here. And I go, you know what? That's not a hill you want to die on. Go ahead and get your skin. But now, we're here at an Asian American Symposium, the best one I know that Fuller has put on. And I would even maybe argue to say the best one anybody's put on. And this is an amazing, amazing time. And I'm dreaming again. For there's no viable program in the world that addresses the unique story and prepares students to reach one of the fastest growing people groups in the United States. Some institutions and seminaries have tried, some have had brilliant professors, but there are still few programs. Seminaries are chock full with Asian American students, as we know, but there really hasn't been a viable Asian American Studies program in any seminary in the United States. Is that true? They've tried, but we haven't gotten it off the ground. So I'm in a place of dreaming again. Fuller is in the heart of the largest concentration of Asian Pacific Americans, Asian Pacific Islanders in the world, or in the U.S. It is the gateway, California is the gateway to the Pacific and the Pacific Rim. We are smack dab in the middle of the highest concentrations outside of Asia, of Asians. Could Fuller be the preeminent Asian American Studies department in the world? We need to equip ministers not just to meet the ethnic specific challenges, but multicultural challenges, but actually what I call a thing called polycultural challenges. Now what the heck is that? Now, you hear of polytheism. Why don't we call it multitheism? Because there's a lot of gods, right? We call it polytheism for a reason, because these polytheists, it's an issue of interaction with each other. And polycultural defined is not just the many, but how those multitudes interact, react in the mix of ethnicity, acculturation, spirituality, family, migration forces, cultural, socioeconomic issues, and generational forces. So it's not just multiple people, but it's how those things interact and mix together. So I call that a polycultural challenge as we look at Asian Americanness. So when I was asked a few months ago, to consider this, I knew Isaac was kind of putting this on. I was excited at it, and I don't know if I really want to go, because we've had gatherings before, and they're just kind of fun, but So Melanie asked me to speak, and I go, well, Melanie, what kind of mucky mucks are going to be here? You know, who's going to be here? Because usually we just, again, preach to the choir. And she said that Dr. Mao is putting this on. Now that's a mucky muck. And so that's a pretty significant time. So Dr. Tran yesterday said, hint, hint, as it related to the Asian Pacific American staff or program, that we need to get it together here, as a hint, hint. And so I would address Dr. Mao, and maybe us too, who will be the champion to be the first, to make this the first viable program in the world, to have a program that addresses the specific needs of Asian Pacific Americans. Will it be fuller? Have we arrived? Or am I just dreaming?